Hello, and welcome to Character Class. We're back again this week, and today I would like to talk to you about 5 ways that you players can help your game master. That's right, 5 ways that players can help game masters, and some of these are probably going to be fairly common sense. Some of them are going to be possibly they might seem onerous, maybe. I don't know, but we'll see. So let's get right into it with number 5. Number 5 is taking notes. If you want to help your game master out as you're playing the game, it's always a good idea to have a few scrap pieces of paper with you and take notes, or have a little notebook that you can jot down things that you want to remember, things that have happened, things that some people have said, or some people have done, NPCs and whatnot. Uh, Take notes, even just to jot down a few lines at the end of a session, kind of summarizing what you guys have been through, can be a big help, because the game master has to keep track of all of this. Absolutely, that's usually what they do. They keep track of everything you guys have done, everything that's happened that you may or may not know about. It's their job to keep track of it because they're running the game. The reason why taking notes can help your game master is because then you also have your own notes that you can refer to, so you don't have to arrest the game. You don't got to stop in the middle of action to ask a question about something that happened 3 sessions ago, because you've got your notes. You can check this out yourself, and that definitely helps your game master. Also, game masters are not infallible. They may forget to write things down. They may simply not misplace their notes. Uh, it happens. Those notes could accidentally get thrown out. They may not remember to write it down, or they simply may not remember, and you guys have been playing for so long, they don't know where in their notes to find this information. So as a player taking notes, you can be a source of information for the game master if need be, and that can be very helpful. Uh, number four. Number four is, of course, paying attention. Now, this seems like absolute common sense, but it's not exactly. Paying attention in a game is something, especially if you're dealing with a larger gaming group, like 5 to 8 other players. The game master is not always going to be dealing with your characters. So there's going to be times in any session, big or small, unless it's just you and the game master playing. And usually that's not the case. But usually there's going to be times when your character is not going to be the center of the attention, is not going to be being dealt with, so you have nothing to do. Now, in those times, it's often like if you have to go use the bathroom, it's fine. If you want to go get something to eat, that sort of thing, that's not what I'm talking about, that you have to always be at the table. No. But if you're at the table, it's always a good idea to pay attention to what's happening, because then if something is happening in, let's say, all your characters are together in one location, but only 2 of the other players are dealing with some of the NPCs. If you're not paying attention, something starts happening, uh, or your character is suddenly brought in, but you haven't been paying attention to what's going on, then the game master then has to take time to bring you up to speed on what's going on. And that can slow down game, cause things to drag out longer than they should, and generally kind of give the impression that you're bored, which, fair enough, that can happen. But if you're paying attention to what's going on around you, you are not only being engaged by watching the events play out, but you're also ready to interact if that opportunity comes up. So that is why you should pay attention. Um, Possibly even take notes while you're not immediately engaged. Something to think about. Number three. Number three is another one that seems like it's common sense, but players often don't follow this. Um, I'm guilty of it myself. Absolutely. Even me. But number three is know what your character can do. Now, that seems like second nature. You should always know what your character can do. Maybe, maybe not. Um, as games progress, as your characters get higher level or learn more skills and whatnot, they may not, they may be gaining skills and gaining abilities and feats. If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, they may have new disciplines and whatnot. If you're playing Vampire or anything like that, they get new things that they can do. And if you don't have a perfect memory and can keep them all in your mind, then you're not always going to know what your character can do. So this is where taking notes also can come into play, because you can give yourself a little cheat sheet, uh, writing down the things that your character can do for easy reference to keep it fresh in your mind and whatnot. So you're always knowing what your character can do, uh, knowing what the roles are for them. Also a good thing to be writing down in your notes uh, if you're keeping them underneath these particular feats or abilities or whatnot. Because then, when the time comes to use them, you're not having to haul out a book and page through it to find what you're looking for. You're not having to ask the DM to find information or recall information that you should know as a player. So always knowing what your character can do and having it written down is a good thing to do and will help your game master immensely, because then you're prepared, you're ready to go, you're ready to play and get the role in the play-in. That was a horrible thing. I will never say that again. I promise. On to number two. Number two. Let's topic change. Look at that. Seamless. Seamless topic change. You didn't even notice. Number two. Interact with other players. Now, this isn't just player-to-player interaction, but that's part of this. Um, Getting players to discuss strategy and whatnot as they're going in. That's amazing. That's fine. I love it as a game master, as a storyteller. I love it when players are discussing amongst themselves, because that, if the players are discussing amongst themselves what to do in a given situation, it might take them 10, 15 minutes of intense discussion on how they're going to tackle a problem. And as a game master, as a storyteller, that gives me time to check my notes, to know what's coming up next, to plan ahead, to be more familiar with my own notes. Because game masters do not always go into every session knowing everything that's going to happen and being fully prepared. So having those little breaks in the middle of games for us to think and check our notes and get ourselves a little better prepared is amazingly helpful for us as game masters. But also, not just player-player interaction, character-to-character interaction as well is also extremely helpful. Not just because it does give that break too, but it also provides fodder for us to use. And that fodder is amazing. Um, because if you have characters interacting, and as the game master, you're watching these characters interacting with each other, interacting with the NPCs, but especially with each other, you can see friendships and alliances form. You can see rivalries sometimes form as well. And these little things we can take note of to use and bring up again and basically use as a lever to move our players in directions we want to do. So those player to player and character to character interactions are fantastic for us. And of extreme help. And the number one tip for ways to help your GM as a player is to be flexible. To be flexible. And what I mean by that is don't get bogged down in the rules. Don't get bogged down in the fact that your game master may have said this is how something worked 3 sessions ago and are now saying something different. Don't be the rules lawyer type that is like, but the book says this. Don't dig in your heels and think everything is set in stone. Um, if you're not flexible, digging in those heels is going to make the game master dealing with you a bad experience for the most part. Some game masters might like that. I don't personally. Um, I hate when people are like, that's not how it says. The book says this. And I'm like, and I say this. And I'm the game master. And I'm the one running the system. I'm the one that has created this world. It is my toy to play with. That is how I think. So I like to be able to change things around. I may full on say this is how something works in one session, and 8 sessions down the road, something that is supposed to happen because this is how I said it worked happens differently. I may be using that as a plot point. That may be something that your characters are supposed to be getting interested in because it's not working the way it's supposed to work. And you guys know it's not supposed to work that way. These are things that I like to do. And if you're flexible, like if you're not flexible and you dig in your heels and you start arguing with the dungeon master or the game master or the other players on a certain point, nothing derails a session faster or brings down the mood faster than an argument. Now, that being said, negotiation is all well and good. You can talk about rules and mechanics and whatnot. That's fine. I would recommend not doing it until after an encounter is over or after a scene is over, then bringing it up rather than in the middle of one. But sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just like this snap that you're just like, wait a minute, doesn't that work this way? Sometimes it just happens that way. And if it does, and the game master says, yeah, usually, but not now. Don't argue then. Find out later. Be flexible. Because usually, if a game master is doing something that is going to be changing, is going to be altering things around and making things different than what you think they should be, they're usually doing it for a good reason. Sometimes that reason is just that they forgot. And in that case, they may be like, oh, right. They may change their mind. That's okay. But it's always for the betterment of the game. And that is why being flexible is my number one tip. There's kind of a corollary to all of these tips that I kind of want to add here at the end. And that when you're, as a player, playing in a game, it's always a good idea to ask yourself if you think you're about to do something that may detract from the game as a whole or detract from other people's experiences. To ask yourself, is what I'm about to do going to add to the game experience? Is it going to add to the other player's experience? And that's something you always want to keep in mind. You always want to be adding to the game, improving it, making it better, making it more fun for everybody. You never want to be taking away from other people's enjoyment and taking away from the game as a whole simply to make your own individual experience more fun. Because if you can make not only your experience more fun, but all the other players and your game master's experience more fun at the same time, that is a win-win-win situation. And those are the best kind of situations because it's 3 wins at the same time. And you can't get much better than that. Except maybe 4 wins. But then we're delving into strange territory, and we're not going there yet. So, yes, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. Let me know what your tips are for players helping game masters out. Please let me know in the comments. I'd love to get a discussion going with some people. And until next time, you all keep rolling dice, and I will see you next time.